on both Facebook and YouTube. It looks like everything is turning on, and as soon as it says we are live and it says we are fully connected. So yes, ladies and gentlemen, that time has come again. I am super excited to be here with you all today for another episode of Countdown to Election Day 2024. The who, what, why, when, where, no cap. And for those that don't know what no cap means, that means no lies. This is all the truth. In an environment where we're talking about disinformation and disinformation, it is critically important that you all understand the truth. And not just from myself, but our two amazing panelists that we will have with us today. Before we get started, for those that don't know, ColumbusBlack.com has been around 19 years now. We're an omni-channel platform connecting the Black community to commerce and to culture. And today we will obviously hit a little bit of both of those. Also, you'll notice that I just did like this, and that's because I'm getting warmed up. When I do this, when our panelists are speaking, that means that they are dropping gems, and I illustrate it with this action, which means that I'm going to be getting some workout tonight. My muscles are going to get bigger and bigger because I already know that we're going to have some gems drop because we always do, and we have an amazing lineup today. Now, with that being said, listen, we have had conversations about this being the most consequential election of our lifetime, right? We already know, we've heard it a million times, every election is important, but this one is something special and unique about it. And so today, my guest that I have with me, we're going to talk about the reasons why they believe, right, from their perspective and all the great things that they do in our community. These are leaders that engage with thousands of people, and they've been doing the work. So they know and understand what people are saying, what people are thinking, and I want to hear from them today, and I want you all to hear from them today as well. So with that, we also understand that there's some things that have been in the media recently about Black men voting. So what's ironic is in the midst of this, even though I did try to diversify the panelists for today, the female, which was an amazing panelist, could not make it today. So we ended up with 3 Black men on today's show. And I think it's appropriate, especially due to the conversations that are out there right now, that we have that Black men conversation about Black men voting as well. So without further ado, I'm going to begin and allow them to introduce themselves as we kick off the countdown to Election Day right here on ColumbusBlack.com. And we are 21 days away, y'all. It's 21 days. Listen, we started this in September, and it was months away. Then it went to weeks away. Now we're at days away from such a pivotal and important time in our lifetime. So with that being said, actually, we're going to kick this off with Brother Craig that's on the line. So we have Senator Hearcel F. Craig on the line with us today. Brother Craig, who also happens to be a D9 member and a member of my grand fraternity, Kappa Alpha Psi Fraternity. And I just want to introduce him, turn it over to you for an introduction of yourself, Brother Craig. For those that don't know you, I want them to get an opportunity to hear from you, who you are, what it is that you do, sir.
Evan, first of all, let me thank you for the awesome privilege of being with you today. I serve in the 15th Senate District. I am so deeply honored. As you already stated, I've had the great privilege and honor of serving nearly 400,000 people. And it is a great honor. It's not the other way around. We serve you and not the other way around. But having said all of that, I've been so grateful and so honored to have served on Columbus City Council for nearly a decade before going to the legislature, served in the House, and now, of course, in the Senate as the Assistant Minority Leader. With that responsibility, it requires doing the work. And that's why I'm so pleased to be on this call, because it is critical. It is a seminal time in our nation's history. I'm pushing on 76. So I did not just start serving when I got in the legislature, I think, or on Columbus City Council. So, having served as the chairman of many boards and was so honored to do so, but served in business, was the president of a nonprofit. Of all of those things, it took me over 40 years before I got elected office. But that gave me an opportunity to learn. And so when you come in public office, not for your own self-aggrandizement, but to do the work that you've been called to do. This issue tonight is critical. It's not an esoteric experience. And my hope is that, I have Black sons and 11 grandchildren and 4 great-grandchildren. And so if we don't come up and thinking about what it is that's going to help us, it's going to be what's going to help our children and our children's children in this conversation tonight. Happy to be here with you tonight. Honored to be with you tonight. I look forward to the conversation.
Outstanding. Thank you so much for that introduction. Yes, you all can see why we have him here with us. Very, very powerful. So thank you, Senator Craig. We appreciate it and looking forward to the conversation as well. We now will introduce the man himself, President Chris V. Ray. He's here with us, y'all. Ladies and gentlemen, I know he'll share the title, but I mentioned as a member of D9, we take honor and pride in the work that we do in the community, but we happen to have the international president of Phi Beta Sigma on the line with us today. And he is also, and I know he'll share, but I'm going to share first, he is the president of the Council of Presidents for NPHC nationally. So we're honored to have you here with us, great brother. We appreciate the work that you do, and we're going to turn it over to you for your formal introduction to our community. I think you're on mute. There we go.
There we go. I was like, look, I don't know if there's anything else that I need to say. I mean, you have said it. You have said it. But I just, just glad to be here. Always good to be with my brothers. Even my brothers from other colors. It's always good to hang out with you guys, and of course my brothers who walk on the square. So anyway, what I do know is that I get the honor and the privilege not only to serve as the international president of Phi Beta Sigma, which has just been the one of the highlights of my good life, and staying busy with the brothers around the world, but helping to forge policies that allow us to do a lot of work in our communities around the world. But having the privilege to serve as the chairman of the Council of Presidents. So as they like to jokingly say, I'm the president of the presidents now for the Divine Nine. But just great to serve with my D9 counterparts. But I also get the chance to also serve as the president of a historically Black college, Barbara Scotia College, down in Concord, here in Concord, North Carolina. And so very, very proud of that title because I get to wake up every day and to help, not only save one of the oldest HBCUs in the country, but help to, prepare another generation of activists, another generation of folks who will run for office, another generation of folks who are going to develop policies that's going to impact our community. Back when I was a young man and had the privilege to be, as our Senator Craig, as an elected official, served as mayor for 3 terms for the city of Spring Lake, North Carolina, which is my hometown. And so when you talk about being able to understand why this election is important at every level, not just from serving as president of a Divine Nine organization, but being someone who served in the military, someone who has had the opportunity to lead a nonprofit organization, be able to work in corporate America, be an elected official. So all the different points that intersect when it comes to us as citizens of this country, and recognizing that that when we have a chance to sit in a room with specifically our brothers right now, and to be able to say why this election is important and why we have to roll up our sleeves and be a part of the process. Many of us would not be in this room today if we did not have opportunities for others who have opened up the doors for us. So I look forward to the conversation and the dialogue today. I'm ready to dig on in and see what's up.
All right. So why don't we do this? We're going to actually keep it with you, and then we're going to come back to Brother Craig, and then we'll kind of go from there. It has been said by many that this is the most consequential. In your own perspectives, right? We know there's many ways we're going to go during this call. We'll talk about policy. We'll talk about the different levels, right? So we'll talk about local. We'll talk about state. We'll talk about national as well. But with the attention the focus on this election and the terms that are being used in your perspective. And the reason why we want to hear in your perspective is because people resonate with people in a certain way. Right. And knowing that we really want to make sure that our Black men that hear this now, but then they may hear this tomorrow or next week leading up to the election, would love to hear your perspective of why you believe that this is such a consequential election for us, especially with the roles that you've played.
Listen,
well,
again,
Brother Craig.
Yes.
Well, yeah, Brother Chris, Brother Ray, let's go ahead. Brother Craig, you go ahead. We'll come back to Brother Ray. Yeah.
Let me also thank Brother Ray, and we honor you. We appreciate your service. I served in the military as well. But getting back to this point, the reason it is so serious, there's a book that just recently came out called War. And when the author talks about that, we were really at the precipice of a nuclear war, and that's not hyperbole. Very recently, and it matters who serves in that office. You know, if it's beyond our own borders and how we look at this issue. We have one person with all of this vitriol and hate speech. They talked about Springfield and the issues around people and talking about them disparaging kinds of ways, very serious ways. That really prides himself on division and separation. And we've got one that is infinitely qualified to serve. And this whole question of what happens in this nation, for one that understands history, and I read history all of the time. I was recently going back to this book, reading about Cornel West and reading the books. And in 1870, 243 years before there was a Black person at Harvard. When you understand the historical context and everything that we are dealing with, and if you don't want to hear history, that's why I point to, and I'm so happy to talk with young. My son is 55 years old, my oldest boy. I'm talking to young men. I'm really pleading to them because this issue will affect them and their lives and their livelihoods and their families. Here's one, and you can ask the question, well, what has he done for me? What did he do with Obama, with birtherism? So the question becomes for all of us, not what he's saying he's going to do. This whole question about, well, I got a check. You did not get a check from him. That was Congress. So when we talk about the truth, and I've heard some young men say, well, he gave me a check. He did not give you a check. And this whole question about, well, should I vote for a Black woman? Is she infinitely qualified to do the work and serve all of us? Now, I would pose empathetically that there are some that would say that, you know, this whole question about whether folks have taken us for granted. They need to continue to pay attention to African-American men. Because there are many have died serving this nation in the military, in those 365 days in Selma, Alabama. Well, they would not even walk. They walked rather than ride. So that whole question is a valid one. But for me, it gets right down to this. In the struggle for our nation, we can come and talk to those and have reasonable disagreement. But this question is greater than that. This question really lies with 2025, whether or not this nation will be intact. That's the critical question for me, with one that is so, in my mind, that is so deeply disturbed and is harmful to all people and children. And so I appreciate your question. I really want to hear from the young men, because I know that there's a struggle. But my hope is that this is a defining moment. This is a defining moment. And that we will come right now and deal with the moment. Now, let's have some disagreement. But the reality of it is, we have 20 days. We've got to get something done.
All right. All right. All right. Well, if y'all didn't feel the passion, if you didn't hear the wisdom and the knowledge, I want you to hit the rewind button when we get done, because you need to hear it. You need to feel that. But before we do that, I'm going to hit this one button. Even though this is live streaming, we'll be able to have all the recordings. I'm going to hit the recording here on Zoom as well. And we're going to go ahead and move on to Brother Ray for that same question to kick us off. Oh, hold up before you go. Thank you both for your service. Thank you both for your service. Want to share that too.
Absolutely. So I want, if you could please restate, the question that you asked.
Yep. So the question is, why do you, in your own words, believe that or feel that this may be the most consequential election of our lifetime, in your words?
Yeah. So I think that when we start thinking about elections, right? The reason why every election is consequential of our lifetime is because between each election, a child is born. And the reality is that we have a responsibility between each election to help lay the groundwork for the policies that's going to impact that child, right? So the reason that Senator Craig and myself was able to serve in the military was because there was a whole string of folks that came before us that was laying the groundwork in order for us to be able to be in an organization that we knew historically was not for us. But it allowed for us to be in this organization that not only allowed us to serve our country, but to provide a lifestyle and resources to take care of our family. A lot of people came before us to create that opportunity, right? And so now that we're in these spaces, we now have to do our part for whoever the next is going to be 20, 30, 40 years from now. That's why each election is consequential in its lifetime. And an election next year is going to be, if there's an election cycle in your state in 2025, that's going to be the most consequential election for those citizens in their lifetime. Because why? Because somebody was born between November 5th and that next election. And so we have to recognize that every time God has allowed us to live in a republic, in a democracy, right? And so that democracy requires us to participate. And everything that we have gained, everything that we have fought for has come from participating in the democracy, right? And so, and even though it has not been easy, right? And there has been barriers, there have been those of us who have been able to figure out a way to overcome the barrier in order for us to be able to still, now we can sit in the front of the bus. Now we don't have to go to the back of the hotel. Now we can run to the front of, all of that came from efforts of individuals that have been long forgotten, and their names have been left on the cutting floor of history, right? And so I would say to anyone that when you think about an election cycle, this election cycle ain't about you. Right? It's about that kid that was just born that is going to be able to live under the policies that will be passed under whatever administration is going to be elected.
Very, very well said. Thank you for that, because I believe that in a lot of cases, just to tag on to that, I believe in a lot of cases, people believe that the election is about them, right? I love this campaign that came out recently. Obviously, we understand that women's rights and the ability to make decisions about their body is a really, really big deal, and it's on the line for the upcoming election. And there's a campaign out there where they have young ladies that are not able to vote or ready to vote yet that ask the adults to think about them.
Yeah.
And that resonates. And so thank you for sharing that particular perspective. So the next thing I want to talk about here is this past week, in the last few days, it's just been all over the media, right? So President Barack Obama made some comments, toward Black men and the election and voting for Vice President Harris. And I know that there's been uproars by certain folks around the country. I wonder if there is a perspective that you all have, or if there's a message that you all want to convey to our Black men, especially those that may have been offended by the comments or the perspectives or the thoughts. And so with that being such a hot button for us, I would love to open that up to you two, because y'all both deal with so many Black men of all backgrounds, and would love to hear your perspective or your thoughts or any messages to our brothers.
Yeah, so I would quickly say, we cannot shame Black men into supporting the vice president, right? That is a losing strategy. You can't shame individuals into supporting her. I think what is important is that we have to be able to show, or individuals or these campaigns need to be able to show how their policies are going to be able to impact the lives of the individuals that is going to be living under them, right? We should not be here trying, folks shouldn't have to supposed to vote for the vice president because somebody told them to. They should be wanting to do it because the information that has been given to them has been credible and has resonated with them for them to make an informed decision. And I think that in this role, right, that I play as president of the fraternity and serving the Divine Nine, my goal is to make sure everyone gets out to vote, right? That's important. Now, in my individual capacity, I want to make sure that we're giving the right information to individuals and showing that, when folks say, was life for me better under this individual or this administration? I got to remind folks at the end of the day that policies are ebbs and flows, right? And the economy and how we may suffer under it or thrive under it depends. It really depends on the specific community that you're speaking to, because there are individuals who are in a certain economic bracket that will say, "Hey, yeah, life was good for me under this one particular administration." But then there's another economic bracket that it don't matter who's in office, they struggling regardless, because there isn't a policy that really talks to those who are really in poverty. And I will tell you that probably both parties have failed in that regard, right? And so I think that there is it depends on who you're speaking to. So that's why it's so important that you have folks like Senator Craig, and you have individuals who are sitting at the table that's in the room that looks like you, that is reminding individuals that, hey, this policy we just wrote is not reaching all the way down to the lowest levels of our community. Are we writing this for folks that are on the higher economic rung, or are we really trying to create policies that's going to impact the lives of everyone? Now, one of the things that I know that this administration can say is that, hey, over the last 4 years or almost 4 years of being in office, that, hey, that truly that Black wealth is up 60% since before the pandemic. Well, when you say Black wealth, we know that that's not going to resonate with everybody, right? But there is a caliber of individuals that has experienced a level of Black wealth or have been able to rise in the economics rung in these last 3.5 years than maybe some other one else. Black unemployment has hit a historic low, but we still know that there's brothers out there still struggling to get a job. Because why? Because you tied into maybe criminal justice reform, because those that got a record still can't get an opportunity. So when we hear these stats that are coming from either of any of the campaigns, right? We got to remember that it's only segments of the population that we're speaking to, and we got to have results or look for policies that is going to impact all levels of society, not just those specific ones, because some people is just not going to, the tax child credit, we may have given a $300 tax child credit to, we cut Black child poverty in half in 2021. That's what was, stated by the campaign, where $300 checks, per child per month. Well, there's some folks that don't get that. That doesn't impact everyone. So we just have to remember that when you're thinking about policies, it's always specific by the various segments of the community.
Yeah. So I would agree with that. So from a socioeconomic standpoint, right, which we always talk about, because that's where you see the differentiation, things are going to impact people based off their socioeconomic situation or status. So really key points that you bring up there. Brother Craig, would you mind sharing your thoughts, right? Going back to the question in regards to the comments that have been made, and how some people may have taken it, but in your words, right, as we're talking to Black men specifically about their engagement in civic, priorities right now and our obligations, any thoughts or words of wisdom you would like to share in your words?
I appreciate very much the comments by Chris, but it's not just shaming, but what we need and what we have to do now is make sure that folks are getting appropriate and truthful information, and that may not always be coming through Twitter, through some of the other systems. And if that's all you're listening to, and that's all the information that you're getting, and perhaps that's what President Obama was attempting to do, but because these are some hard conversations that we have to have. Because it's just not enough for me to say to my kids, well, you can graduate from college. We've got to work to do that. There are certain processes and things that we've got to do to get through that system. Now, look, I think he's absolutely right. There are folks that perhaps have not been able to benefit from the largesse of this system. And we got to do everything that we can to make sure that wherever folks are, that they're being able to get the appropriate help for their families and their children. Because the question is, we've got teenagers killing one another. We've got some hard questions we've got to answer. And we've got this issue around police and what that means. But we've got to save our children's lives. We've got very hard questions that we've got to deal with. Look, my mother and lots of mothers in my generation came here cleaning houses as a maid. It was the community. So many deposited into my life. I used to have to go the fairgrounds to get commodities while my mother worked. These are real things, real issues. So I know I live in the central city. This is not hyperbole. We just had some shootings down the street. Several years ago, we had 17 shootings and a number of murders. So my struggle, and if you look at my record, because you just can't go on what I say, is the kinds of policies that we have fought in the legislature to make sure that wherever families and children are, that they have the resources for moms and dads to make it, and not just to survive, but thrive. And so there's real talk because this work is real. And so who has the policies? And what Obama has said in those 8 years that Trump was able to be the beneficiary of many of those policies, the largesse of that work, because of the work had been done before. You've got to look at who is actually committing to the work, having at least presenting policies that will help the least of those, while the others are growing in the middle class and those that are getting that are up in the upper echelon of our community. These are real questions. These are real questions that affect people's lives. And the question becomes, does that other individual that is running, has he done anything materially that changed your life? Now, I had to get student loans like many of us. Biden went, that's a question for a whole lot of folks, to make sure that those student loans were not just simply erased, but you would be able to go on and buy a home, to take care of your mother that are struggling or they have cancer. My wife had cancer and her cancer came back this year. These are real issues. Does that individual, has he done anything that materially change your life or make it different for those young men and women that are walking the streets, that are hungry? My daughter adopted 5 children, and every one of them are on the spectrum. Has he done anything that will affect their lives? Those are real questions.
Those are real questions, y'all. Heavy, heavy, heavy. Y'all we gotta think about the real. There's so much stuff that's on the surface that's being talked about, but we're not getting into the real. And so y'all have both opened it up, right? And y'all have both used the term. So I want to thank y'all for answering that question. Y'all both have used the term policy, right? I need y'all to do me a favor because y'all have woven in a few real life scenarios, but I just want to go a little bit deeper, specifically around the Black community and the policies that are on the table, right? And not speaking it in the term of policy, but more in real life impact. Because for me, I feel like that's a part of the barrier. It's in layman's terms. These are decisions that are being made, and this is how it will impact you or us as a community. For our Black men, for our Black women, people of color, period. There are things, and our allies, right? At the same time, there are policies that are at the table, or decisions, as I will call them, that are being made that are very serious. If there's one or two that you feel, right, really resonates, that can have an impact, similar to what was just shared, but will have an impact on us, that everybody should be able to listen to and hear, would you all share your perspective on it and why we should be paying attention, digging in, and understanding when we make a decision at the ballot box, how that decision may impact us in our day-to-day lives at this point?
Yeah, so I got 2 right off the bat. But before I bring them out, I'll say this is why it's important that folks realize that this election is not about what's at the top of the ticket, but it's about what's on the entire ticket, right? You know, because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter who's elected president of the United States if you don't give them the right individuals in Congress, because policy is crafted there. Policy is passed there and then sent to the president to sign, right? And if the president wants specific policy to be passed, it still has to be crafted. It still has to go over to the House of Representatives or to the U.S. Senate, and then it has to be, managed right, and then eventually have to be agreed upon, then voted on, and then sent over. That's policy that we're talking about. And the one big policy that needs to be passed is the updated Voting Rights Act, the John Lewis Voting Rights Act. Plain and simple as that, right? Because we know that in this country, there are still individuals who wake up in the morning who believe that the color of their skin is more superior than mine. And so therefore, they make it hard for us to have access to the ballot box. And so that's why it's important that we have voting rights acts in our country, because we're still not there yet. That's number one. Then we need to pass the George Floyd criminal justice reform policies as well, bill. Because why? Because we know that there are individuals who wear the badge, who are doing things that impact us as Black men, specifically as Black men. And so George Floyd Policing Justice Act needs to be passed as well. Those are 2 critical policies that I believe could be very impactful for us and specifically for Black men. And that is why when you think about who's going to be at the top of the ticket, you got to also think about who's going to be, throughout the ticket, who's going to be your representative in Congress, who's going to be your representative as, some states, not all states here in North Carolina, judges are elected, right? So they're on the ballot. So I got to make sure I turn my ballot over and make sure that I can, because what do? They
Right.
normally put the judges on the back of the ballot and the bottom of the ballot, right? So we got to make sure we know who these judges are. There was a time when the judges were nonpartisan in North Carolina. Now they have a party affiliation. And so you need to make sure you flip your ballot over. And clearly now, because of what's happening in this country, you need to know who the dog catcher is because they out here eating dogs. So we got to know that we got to make sure we elect the proper dog catcher because that's what's important. Everybody on the ballot matters, and it's important that we get that message out. Don't just be worrying about the president. You need to worry about the members of Congress, your folks that you're sending to your state house of representatives, your local. I used to tell folks, I got more power over you as your mayor than the president has at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. I'm gonna be the one that's gonna decide who's gonna pave your streets or not. I'm gonna be the one who's gonna let you know if you're gonna keep on getting flooded every time we have a rainstorm, or if we're able to come over here and grade the streets better so that flow happens better. I'm the one who's responsible for all that, not the president of the United States. Got to know the power of your local elected officials and why you got to make sure that you stay involved. So the George Floyd Policing Act and the John Lewis Voting Rights Act.
Powerful, brothers. Absorb that. Go ahead, Brother Craig. We're waiting on you. We see you ready.
Listen, I support what Chris is saying unilaterally. And I think he's absolutely right. Those issues are vital. They are critical. We've got to get it done at the federal level. He's right about this because so much of what occurs and almost everything that occurs, he was mayor, I served on Columbus City Council, affects the daily lives of people in the state legislature. Folks ask me, are you going to? No, I can go to Washington, and I frequently do, but here's the thing. What happens in the state legislature is a bicameral system. What happens, it has to be agreed in the House and the Senate, and the governor has to sign on it. But it affects your life. We affect everything in the Ohio legislature, from the death penalty all the way up or down. And it is critical. The DEI, all of that. Public education is critical. And so for me, all of those issues are vital. Public education, how you get health care, and who gets health care, access to health care. A workforce and economic development. We have a little thing called Intel. We will have the #1 Intel plant in the world. But who will get those jobs and access to those jobs? Google. We have all of those things in the city of Columbus. Who will have access to those jobs, and how will they have access? So healthcare, this issue around quality education is vital. We're all men that have matriculated through college, but these jobs, you can go to Intel, get a certification, and make $100,000 a year. Who will get those jobs? And so healthcare, education, access to housing. I've been ranking member on our select committee on housing, and that is vital, because if we talk about infant mortality, where our children, African-American children, are dying at 2 to 3 times the rate as any child dying is too many. But that decision is made right here on the state level, and how we appropriate resources. And so those issues are critical. Those are the issues that I'm engaged in on a daily basis. It took me 5 years, but I wrote a freestanding dental clinic in my district. Now, and a week ago, we cut the ribbon, working with the dean of Ohio State University. At one point, I put $1.2 million in the facility, and I told him, you got to bring money to the table. But we will have, long after I'm gone, they will have dental care, because of what happens if you don't have good dental care. It impacts all of your very serious issues around health. We were able to put $1 million into the African-American, one of the few African-American and African-American extension centers where you can take graduate courses at that center. We're able to totally renovate that center with high skill technology right in the district. And we were able to move about almost $70 million in the district from the legislature. So it can happen, but the work needs to happen and not self-aggrandizement.
Outstanding. Wow. Y'all listen, y'all just dropped it. Those are real life scenarios, real life policy impact, real life things that we are dealing with and or will continue to deal with. The thing is, y'all, we need everybody who hears this to share this, okay? Don't take for granted because you are privy to this conversation, this discussion that, yep, I heard it, I agree, whatever, I learned something, great thought. No, don't hold it to yourself. It's too much on the line. This is a message that should be spread and shared everywhere around this country. So please hit that share button because we know that this stuff is resonating. I want to ask you all to share something. Either one of you or both of you can share your perspective on this. Y'all talked about a lot of different policies and y'all touched on health and healthcare a couple of different times. We know that this situation with our women, right, and what's on the line, right, in regards to their protective rights is a very, very big deal in regards to the decisions that are being made for them. There are brothers out there that don't necessarily see how serious this is or may not understand how it impacts them or us as a community. Would you all share your perspective, right, on these protective rights and women's rights around their bodies, why this is so important and such a big deal, not just that it's taking them back, but what impact to us as men, not to the women themselves?
Listen, this issue is critical. We had a 12-year-old child that had been raped, that had to go outside of the state to get the kind of medical care that she needed. It is a complex issue. It ought to be between their faith, their physician, their family. It's a serious issue. And as men, we link hands with our sisters. My prayer is always, as a minister, that situation not ideal. My mother and father weren't married. It's a complicated issue right now more than ever. To me, it's a medical issue. It's a critical issue. And the men in the legislature have the significant knowledge that can tell women how to, in terms of their bodies and the critical issues and the medical care that they need. Doctors are afraid to death. And women have died. And we simply cannot have it. So we've got to figure out as men where we can bridge together. You know, I have daughters, and my concern, not only just my biological daughters, but all young women get the proper care that they need to make the right kinds of decisions to affect their livelihood and their families. And that's where we are right now. And it's a very, very serious issue.
Thank you for sharing. Brother Ray, anything to add to that?
Yeah. I think the key takeaway is that, this is super complicated, right? In the terms of you're telling a human being truly what to do with their body, right? And I think that there's a lot to come. It's an economic issue. It's a health issue. The mere fact that there are some states that have passed such restrictive laws. I think that's what makes this disturbing, right? I'm not talking about the act of abortion. I'm talking about the fact that sometimes there are women that are in health crisis, and this is the only procedure that's needed in order for them to survive. And the mere fact that in some states it is that restrictive. So what does that mean? And we got to break that down. If you're a poor Black woman in Louisiana, you have to go outside the state of Louisiana to seek the type of medical attention you may need if you're in a situation where you can't get it in the state that requires that there may be an abortion that is needed, that medical procedure that's needed to save your life. But here you are, you're a poor Black woman that may not have access to transportation, the type of health care, or the means to go to another state to get the care that you need. That's what the issue is that what ends up happening is that there becomes a population of women that becomes trapped and then has to end up in a circumstance where they may have to have this child, or they may not be able to have it, and they still end up, the child ends up dying and they end up dying because they're not able to get the proper care because of how restrictive the laws are. What kind of country are we living in? I mean, that it doesn't make any sense. So it's very easy as a talking point as an elected official to say, well, we'll just leave it to the states, right? But now what ends up happening is that there's no true equity across the states.
Yeah.
There ends up being certain women that no longer have access because I may not have the resources to get to another state to get the health care that I need because of where I'm living at. That's not right. And that's what we're fighting for, is that if you're going to do it, everyone needs to have the capacity to have access, because I can assure you that it will never be that restrictive in all states. So that means that it needs to be equal across the board for all women to be able to have that access. And then there's a psychological piece that comes with it. And I just think a lot of men, again, whether it's you got to remember, man, we all got moms. Not everyone has sisters, but many of us have sisters. We got aunties, we got cousins, we got very close female friends. Think about the agony that some of them may have to go through. And now you're a part of all of that because you decided not to go vote, realizing that that the current Supreme Court's makeup, it was made off of a decision because you have individuals who ideology has been preparing them for that moment, and they did exactly what they said that they were going to do, and no one should be surprised.
Wow. Okay, y'all have done it again, right? Very heavy, very serious. This is a big one, y'all, right? For our listening audience, this is a very, very big one. So much on the line, and we need to take all of that into consideration. And the irony is, and I wouldn't call it the irony, but there was a comment made by we have an online guest who literally said, any and all Black men that have a mother, daughters, and sisters who love them, they shouldn't even consider voting for anyone other than, and I'll leave the rest. Y'all can check that comment out on YouTube, but we'll leave it there, okay? So it's something that, I asked that question intentionally because I think sometimes people don't realize the impact that these things have on them specifically because it doesn't seem relative. So dealing with reproductive rights for women is talked about a lot by a lot of women. Men, we need to understand that, once again, every sister, every mother, every daughter, every niece, every, aunt could be impacted by that. And we need to support our women in this as well. So just wanted to make sure we hit that. So listen, we are coming up on our wrap up. I want to thank these two men, but before we wrap up, we want them to be able to close it out with their final statements. And before that, I do want to ask if there is a question. We do have people live with us on Zoom. If you have a question, drop it in the chat. If you have a comment, drop it in the chat. On Facebook, we have people watching now, and on YouTube watching now. Same thing. If you have a question, this is your opportunity. If you have one for either Senator Craig or President Ray, feel free to ask that question now before we go into final wrap. And then we will go ahead and close out. And with that, we'll actually start the closeout. And so one of the things that happens leading up to these shows or these interviews is that before we come on, you'll normally say, I want to make sure I land this message, right? This is what I'm thinking about. I want to make sure I say this. And then guess what? A lot of times we get off the show and somebody says, I can't believe I didn't say that, right? So what I want to do is, before we even get there, if there's something, if you think about the title of the event itself, Countdown to Election Day 2024, the who, what, why, when, and how, no cap, right? Straight truth. And this is an opportunity for you to have a platform to tell your truth. If there's any other message that hasn't already been delivered that you have in your mind, I would like to open it up for you all to share that final perspective as a part of the wrap up at this point in time, and let y'all get back to your evening. And so, Brother Ray, we're going to actually kick it off with you, and then we're going to wrap up with Brother Craig. Okay.
Well, again, I just want to say thank you always for the opportunity to, to share a stage with any one of my brothers who's willing to be a trusted voice in the community, right? Not telling us what to do, but making sure you create a platform for individuals to receive knowledge. That is so powerful. And then you allow your listeners to then make their own informed decision. That's the beauty of this process, right? And so as we close out in these last couple of days, I will finish where I started. This election is not about us. It's about the next generation of individuals who are to come after us. If you have a child, if you have a grandkid, if you have a niece, a nephew, or you got a play niece or a play nephew from your line brothers, because you ain't had no kids yet and you're an only child, right? Know and understand that this election matters for these young kids, and everything that we do or don't do is going to impact their lives. And that's why we have to make sure that we get out to vote. Plain and simple as that. It's the one tool that we got. And sometimes, you may feel like, well, I'm throwing my vote away. You're never throwing your vote away when there was people who shed their blood for you to have the vote. So you're never throwing the vote away, right? Because there are generations who have shed blood for you to have the ability to cast the vote. So here goes a group of people that came over on ships, that went through the worst atrocities that humanity could even imagine for centuries, still found a way to make it out of shackles, and then find a way to build our own schools, our own hospitals, our own churches, our own communities, march to the polls, boycotted, rinse, repeat, started all over again, made it to where we was eventually able to get somebody that looked like us to the White House after coming over on ships. That's why this election is important. That's why this is so important. And if you are a Black man in this country, we have a responsibility to take care of our families. And you exercising your right to vote is your responsibility. Now, who you choose to cast your vote, that's up to you. But you have a responsibility to do it. And you have a responsibility to sit back, to read the policies. Now, I can't tell you what one candidate is talking about. Last time I checked, they were dancing on stage for 39 minutes. So I don't know. They haven't yet told me what they're going to do. But what I do know is that one candidate said that they want to invest in affordable housing because that's an issue in this country. And I'm a part of a fraternity that is literally building affordable housing in America right now because we get it. And so that's what they said. They said, there's a candidate who also said that they're going to go after these corporations that are doing price gouging because there is no reason why inflation is now getting back down to the levels that it is and we're paying what we're paying. That means the corporations aren't doing what they're supposed to be doing. There was a candidate that said that, that if I start a small business in this country, that, that they're going to potentially fight for that small business to be able to get a $50,000 tax credit. Now, whether that passes or not, I don't know, but that's what this candidate is talking about. That matters. That's a big deal. And so all I know is that there are candidates that are out there that are talking about issues that matter. And then there are candidates that are dancing on the stage. You decide on who you want to vote for. But what I do know is that I'm going to cast my vote because there's too many people who have come before me who have done too much for me not to do it. That's why we got to do this.
Ladies and gentlemen, that right there was his final statement, unless something else comes up, and it was a powerful one. And wow. All right, I'm gonna leave it there. Wow, right? Brother Craig, we're gonna turn it over to you. Thank you, Brother Ray.
Listen, Dr. King said this: human progress never rolls in on the wheels of inevitability. It never happens just because it happens. Chris has said it. Some of us have lived through it. We've seen Bull Connor. We've seen George Wallace. So this is not the first time. But my mama and so many like her have struggled, and your parents are struggling to make sure that you would have quality of life. This is serious. It's not the regular election. You got one person of one party, another person of another party. These issues are fundamental and foundational. This is serious. We can argue and dispute later. But if the one individual has been so divisive and so hate-filled to create this atmosphere, to literally tear up a nation, you've got to ask yourself, when folks have struggled and died for you, I would not be here but because of you. And I take that very seriously. You've allowed me to serve. And as long as I got breath in my body, these 20 days and beyond, we can sleep on November the 6th.
Preach.
I ain't sleeping.
Preach.
I ain't sleeping.
Preach.
Stay woke, because this is too serious. If you got to do it for at least 15 minutes, stay off of TikTok. Let somebody, your grandma, granddaddy, somebody share with you what the price has been paid. The cost of doing nothing will not work this time. Don't let anybody tell you. Don't let anybody define you. Only God can do that. We've got high stakes. Chris has said it. It's our children and our children's children that will have the impact of this election. And I believe that with all of my heart. I'm not lying to you. Take that seriously. You matter. Don't let anybody tell you that you don't matter. Let's go out there. Let's go to work. Let's get it done. This is your senator. I love you with all my heart.
Man, dropping those gems left and right, y'all. Powerful all night. You matter. Yes, you matter. Right? So listen, y'all. Now I think everybody understands why I do what I do. God provided a blessing to have this platform. And all I could say is thank you, Senator Craig. Thank you, President Ray. We appreciate the gems that y'all have dropped tonight, the knowledge, the information, not miss or diss information, the real, true, no cap information for our community. Ladies and gentlemen, those that are on the line, I'm going to ask y'all, please, once again, just take a moment, hit the share button, share it with a friend. We share all the jokes, all the memes, all the stuff that does not matter. We share them like nonstop. From the time we wake up to the time we go to sleep, people are sharing stuff that does not matter. I'm going to personally ask you to take an opportunity to share this with a family member, a friend, a coworker, that young man, right, that you know you got in your phone. Share it with them. Say, hey, just listen to this, because you never know if it could change a life. That could change our kids' lives and our grandkids' lives. That's what's on the line. So I want to thank y'all again. And listen, y'all, this is ColumbusBlack.com's countdown to Election Day. As he said, I said 21 earlier, 20 days. Don't rest now, right? If you haven't voted, go vote. If you're checking with other people, ask them, have they voted? Early vote. Get it out the way. All right? Get it done now. Don't wait. You got to have a plan, because the lines are going to get longer and longer, which means that people are going to have more and more excuses. Okay? We cannot sit by the sidelines on this one. So with that, we're going to go ahead and wrap up. I want to thank y'all once again, as we always do. Listen, go to columbusblack.com. You can learn more. You can see more. You can go to our Facebook or our YouTube page, and you will see weeks of these kind of powerful conversations. There's a message for everyone. I don't care how old or young you are. Go and check it out. There's some gems that have been dropped. But now we got to vote. That's all that matters at this point. And then we got to hold people accountable, right? So that's the next step. We'll come there. We'll get to one step at a time. So with that, we're going to wrap up. As always, listen, in order to be more successful in your future, you need to understand a little bit more about your past. That's the reason why we just had Senator Craig and President Ray, and we just had a blast. And with that, deuces, y'all, and I'm out. Have an amazing week, and go vote. Thank you very much for your time. All right.